On today's show, it is episode 2054 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. It's a crossover edition of the show with Locked On Pistons. Joining me to discuss the Eastern Conference race, Trey Young, Cade Cunningham, the Locked On NBA Top 100, and much more. And it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Ku Khahil. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons for the Locked On Network over the last 4 years, been a credential media member over the last 3 years, and I appreciate all of you guys who make Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, that's another great way to support the podcast. It's the same thing with Locked On Hawks. All of you guys listen from Locked On Hawks, Hawks fans, subscribe to Locked On Hawks at YouTube, podcast platform, leave a 5-star review, whatever, same thing. Locked On Pistons, Locked On Hawks, same thing. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is closer than you think. Actually, it's already started. Not a great week one for me. Not a great week one. Lions lost, fantasy football lost all my leagues. Not great. But new customers with FanDuel can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel app at FanDuel.com to get started today. And like I said earlier, we are joined by Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks to talk about the Pistons versus the Hawks, Atlanta's aggressive offseason, and also Cade versus Trey Young. But Brad, how are you doing today, man? Appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me. It's I'm living the dream, man. We're almost there. We're like, less than a month till training camp. Things are ramping up. We're feeling good. And just as an aside, and an equally not so fun week one in the NFL down here in Atlanta. So I'm right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not the kicker. What's going on with the kicker? Ku. Actually, you guys, the kicker is Ku. So
that's right.
What happened, man? What's going on?
It was not ideal. Hey, it's not. Fortunately for me, not a Falcons podcast because it'd be a lot easier to talk about that. But we won't do it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll start off with talking about Atlanta's aggressive offseason, then we'll move into Cade versus Trey Young, then wrap up with Detroit versus Atlanta for a top 4 seed in the East. But let's start off with your guys' offseason. Atlanta was incredibly aggressive this offseason. Got Kristaps Porzingis. They brought in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was a Pistons target. Atlanta was able to get him in free agency. They got former Piston Luke Kennard. They have Jalen Johnson coming back. They also swindled former Pistons general manager Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars for a future pick that might be a top 5 pick next year. How do you feel about Atlanta's offseason over the last few months?
I think you used the word aggressive. It certainly was aggressive. I liked basically all the big stuff I liked, which is not always the case. Like, I think at least I had a reputation at one point for being pretty critical of things the Hawks did. And right now it's like, this is a new front office too. That's the thing that was kind of sneaky about this, is that they promoted from within, but they had this front office search going on at the same time as some of this stuff. And they go out and they add 2 of the more interesting players that changed teams this whole summer in Porzingis and Alexander Walker. You mentioned the trade with the Pelicans. That's one where, like, I have tried to kind of caution people, like, it's a fantastic trade. There's no question about that, to get that unprotected pick. But it's not guaranteed to be like an absolute grand slam trade. It could be a grand slam trade, to your point. If that's a top 5 pick, then it's going to be an absolute home run. But even regardless, like, I think even if it's not that, it's still a good trade. So the 3 biggest things: Porzingis, they paid a price that was really good value, I thought, to get him without having to risk a long-term contract with him as well. He's on an expiring deal. Alexander Walker was essentially a free agent acquisition, ended up being a sign and trade, but for very little cost, like a 2nd-round pick. So not a whole lot going on there. And then the trade with the Pelicans, those are the 3 biggest things. And for me, I liked or loved all 3 of them. And you can't really ask for much better of a reaction than that, especially for a team that wasn't great last year, but also was competitive while clearly trying to retool their roster. So the last 2 years combined, but especially this offseason, it's been pretty encouraging, I think, for Hawks fans.
Yeah, so an outsider's perspective, I absolutely love what Atlanta did this offseason as well. I think the roster Atlanta has is very intriguing. I wanted to ask you, are you concerned at all with, obviously, the injury concern? Because I really like Jalen Johnson, but he's also dealt with some injuries. Kristaps is a crazy talent, but he's dealt with injuries, obviously, as recently as last playoffs. Hopefully he's all healed from whatever that was. But then also Luke Kennard, who you guys brought in, also is very injury prone. Like, a lot of these guys on Atlanta, I believe, are injury prone. So is there any concern with that? And do you believe that the Hawks have the depth on the roster that if they do deal with some injuries, that they will be able to better handle it this year? Last year, Jalen Johnson went down. I feel like it kind of really screwed up their season. Do you feel like they're better handled to deal with something like that if it were to happen this year?
I think it's a reasonable point for sure. They are better set up for it because I've been talking about this the whole summer, but essentially the Hawks have 7 starters, like 7 starting caliber players. They have the 5 they already had, plus Alexander Walker and Porzingis, without having to trade anybody that they were like really counting on. And that's nice to have 7 real guys. The depth beyond that is a little bit more questionable. You mentioned Kennard. I like that signing, but certainly like he's their 8th man. It's kind of fine if he's your 8th man. I feel like the shooting plays up really well. They have Mo Gay, who I know people don't know nationally a ton about, but they really like Mo Gay as this potential, like, kind of do everything front court player who can really play defense. Beat Krejci's solid. So they have some pieces for depth purposes. But part of the reason why Porzingis in particular was available for the price he was available for is that he hasn't been healthy. I've been throwing this out there, but he's averaged 50.1 games per season in his 10-year career. So basically he misses 30 games a year on average. The good thing for the Hawks is that they don't have to have him play 70 games. They have Onyeka Okongwu, who's a starting caliber center in his own right. A lot of teams, like, you wouldn't have a real guy behind Porzingis, and the Hawks actually do, which makes it better. But the third center spot's kind of up in the air. So I think you kind of have to have reasonable expectations, particularly for Porzingis. Like, if you're banking on him playing 75 games, like, he probably isn't going to do that. But as long as you're okay with him playing 60, 55, 60, like, and I think the Hawks are generally, obviously not rooting for that, but they're probably okay with it. They're set up to kind of withstand it. The Jalen Johnson thing is maybe a swing, like you mentioned. He's played, I think it's like 90 games combined the last 2 seasons. If that happens again, if he plays 40 games, they're not going to be the same quality of team. They'll be okay. They won't fall off a cliff like they did last year necessarily, but he has to be out there to have them reach their ceiling. That's very obvious, but it's also like he's really kind of indispensable for them as far as like what else they have on their roster. They have other guys who are quality wings, but he's kind of the only like true power forward like archetype on their roster, the defense, the rebounding, all that stuff as well. So he's important, but I think I wouldn't give him the injury prone label yet. Like it's kind of there. It's lingering if there's another one of these, but for now, they're all systems go with him. He seems to be ready for training camp. Porzingis is the one that's like, you kind of have to, it's unavoidable. It's a topic. It will always be a topic with him, but everything else, I'm not terribly worried about as I knock on wood here in early September.
Fair enough. So I have 2 more questions before we move on. First question is, I really was a fan of Zachary Ricochet this past year. I thought that because he didn't look like, at least from an outsider point of view, that he has like this superstar potential that a lot of people kind of just like threw him to the side. But I feel like he has potential to be a really good starter for a long time in the league that does a lot of good things for a team, a really good starting wing. I segue that to ask about what's the starting lineup you believe going to look like? Is Ricochet going to start again this year, or are they going to change things up? Is Kristaps going to start over Okongwu? How is this going to look?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in 4 of the 5 spots. I think Ricochet is going to start. I'm not saying for sure because, pre-training camp, the Hawks are pretty buttoned up. Like, they wouldn't be coming out there and telling people if they were not going to start Ricochet. But I think they're going to. I think it's going to be Trey Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Ricochet, Jalen Johnson. I'm pretty confident about those 4. Obviously, Trey, Dyson, and Jalen are absolute locks to start based on last season. I keep going back and forth on this. I think I'm going to project Porzingis as a starting center. He's the better player. I think everyone would agree that he's the better player. I'm actually higher on Okongwu than most people are, and I think there is an argument at least to, hey, if Porzingis is not going to play every back-to-back, for instance, if you're going to kind of manage him a little bit, maybe it's easier to do that when he's not starting. But he's also so good that it's like maybe tough politically to not start a guy like that. Like, most guys at his level want to start, and that's the reality. So my guess, my 4 of them are confident, and then I would throw Porzingis in there. So Trey, Dyson, Ricochet, Jalen, and Porzingis at the 5.
All right, and the final question, which will segue us into the next topic, is Trey Young. There's been noise about an extension possibly coming, not coming. Where do you think everything stands with that? Do you think that the Hawks and Trey Young will eventually come to terms with an extension, or do you think this could possibly be this Hawks segueing into a whole new, future with their team? Where do you stand with that right now?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think if I had to guess now in September, it won't happen before the season starts as far as the extension is concerned. The interesting wrinkle with his extension is that he's actually eligible for it all the way through the season. Most of these have a stopping point, and he's eligible in November. He's eligible in December. If things are going well, they could find a deal during the season. That wouldn't surprise me a ton. But yeah, I mean, anytime you have a situation where a guy of his stature can opt out and leave this summer, there's nothing you can do about it. That's it's a storyline. Like, I think I've been projecting Trey to stick around beyond this season, whether it comes down to an extension or maybe a re-signing next summer if things go well. I think if they hit their ceiling that we'll talk about, or even like a reasonable outcome, they're going to end up bringing him back because I think things will have gone well. The danger really comes like if this doesn't go well this year, if they underachieve, then it becomes much more likely that they might look at things and be like, you know what, why don't we turn this over a little bit? Obviously, it would be brutal to lose him for nothing in free agency. You want to get something for that kind of guy if he leaves. But that's on the table. I still think it's much more likely that he sticks around either on an extension or on a re-signing. But the Hawks also know this. I'm sure you've heard this outside of Atlanta. There hasn't been like a screaming trade market for Trae the last year and a half. The Hawks know that. This is it's a new front office. It's kind of a pragmatic front office that's like, hey, Trae, we don't not necessarily trying to get him to leave, but like, hey, no one's beating down our door for you. We probably know that. So that's why they're not going to give him the full max right now. They don't think they have to. So there's a little bit of a standoff, nothing like terribly negative, but the Hawks anytime there's not a deal and it's a star player who wants a deal, there's some friction there, but I think it's going to be okay as long as they play well. If they don't play well, they don't win games, then all things kind of go back on the table.
Yeah, from an outside point of view, this is going to be one of the more interesting contract situations to watch because with this new CBA, a player like Trae, which we'll talk about, Locked On's top 100 list is revealed. We'll break down where Cade versus Trae is at. But a player like where Trae is ranked, usually, even if they're not considered the top tier superstar, usually when they come up for contract extension, they just get the contract extension over the last few years because you can't just lose them for nothing. Usually they give these guys these max extensions. But now with this new CBA, the second apron, I feel like that we might see more teams like this not want to give a guy who maybe is a top 30, top 40 player, an all-star caliber player. In past years, maybe it was automatically that's a max due. We just give you the contract. We don't want you to leave. Now it's like, okay, we got to be more careful with this. If you're not maybe a top 10, top 15 guy, do teams just start handing out the maxes still? So I think this is the first situation we're going to really get the glimpse at that. And I'm really interested to see how the Hawks and Trey Young proceed forward with this. But talking about Trae, coming up, like I mentioned, Locked On's top 100 has been revealed. Cade has been ranked on the list. Trae ranked on the list. They're both top 30. Who was ranked higher? And was it correct? We'll talk about it, break it down coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is now here. Like I said earlier, week 1 was not great for me. Fantasy football, just lost all my leagues. Lions got destroyed by a divisional rival. It was not great. But FanDuel is making it more fun for me, at least, is making sure you're also ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I've told you guys this many times before. I've been using FanDuel for years now. A few years ago, I didn't know where to go, didn't know what to try out, but I tried out FanDuel, and I haven't stopped using it since. It's super fun to use, super self-explanatory, super easy, but most importantly, obviously, is that it's super fun to use. And again, new offer, $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 now to use across the app in bonus bets. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app with FanDuel. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe on the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review if you haven't already. Those are great ways to support me and the podcast. Do the same thing for Locked On Hawks. 5-star review. Subscribe over at Locked On Hawks. Find it wherever you find Locked On Pistons as well. But let's move into the top 100 list, which is game revealed, which I don't know about you, Brad, but I was really happy that Locked On did this. So I have to stop referencing like the Ringer's top 100 because why should we value the Ringer more than us? You know, we watch these teams every day. Like, why can't we be making votes? So I'm actually really excited about this. And I hope, look, I'm just going to say, I really hope everyone took it as serious as I did because we can't be looking like fools out here with the list. You feel me? But okay. Trey Young and Cade were both ranked in the top 30. Cade was ranked 15th, which I felt like was a pretty good placement for him. I was happy with that placement. I believe I had him on my list 12th, I think. So round 12 to 15 was fine for me. Trey Young came in at 26 on this list. He's right behind Jaren Jackson, right in front of Darius Garland. I believe on my list, I had Trey Young around 27 as well. I had him in front of Darius Garland. Once you started getting into these smaller guards, I had him at the top of this list of like Darius Garland, John Morant, De'Aaron Fox. I had him at the top. So that was around right where I would have placed Trey Young. But from your perspective, do you believe Trey Young should be higher? Do you think he should be higher than Cade? Do you think maybe even should be lower? Like, where do you stand with this list and its rankings?
Yeah, I would echo what you said about hoping everybody took it seriously. It's hard, man. I mean, I do say that. Like, even when I criticize other lists, even like we kind of have to do this sometimes, where it's like, hey, this top 100, I don't like this. But I always try to give the caveat, like, it's really hard unless you sit down and do it yourself. You don't know how hard it is. It's really hard to do these rankings. I had a hard time with mine. I don't know about you. It's hard. Like, it takes time and
it
all
was
those
very
things.
hard. It took me like 2 days.
Yeah, it's a lot. Anyway, I think Trae's ranking is fine. I really do. Like, I was prepared. Honestly, I was prepared to be outraged. I find myself, it's weird, and I won't give the whole thing, but like, if you told me 4 or 5 years ago that I'd be like the high guy on Trey Young, I would have been shocked. Because like, I used to be probably lower on Trey, even though I covered him than other people were, because he was put up all the big numbers and all that stuff. I was like, he's the kind of guy that I think usually gets kind of overrated sometimes. Puts up a lot of stats, all those things. But then it all turned for whatever reason on Trey. People like started giving up on him and all these things. He's really good at basketball. That's my broad take on Trey Young. He's very good, even though he has some flaws for sure. I had him a little bit higher than this. Like, I had him in the low 20s. Spoiler, I had Cade higher. I think I expected Cade to be higher than Trey. That's perfectly reasonable. Cade was all NBA last year. I think he finished, 7th in MVP, 8th in MVP. Like, he got some MVP votes. Like, that's the kind of guy who's going to be higher than Trey. And that's totally fine with me. I would have had him higher. The gap maybe a little bit closer than what our full list was, but I think it's totally fine. And again, to your point about the smaller guards, I'd use that as a dividing line too. Like, he is ahead of guys like Ja and Garland and Jamal Murray and De'Aaron Fox. And I totally agree with that. That's what would have bothered me. If Trey was below those guys, I'd have been like, all right, I don't like this. But because he's not, I'm totally fine with the ranking. I think it's like you can quibble over a spot or two, and that's part of the challenge of this is like going spot for spot. But I had him like a couple spots higher, but it's, in the great scheme of things, it's basically the exact same.
So I want to move into this because a few episodes ago, and we'll get into it later, it's kind of hinted at here, I think Atlanta versus Detroit are going to be a really big rivalry this season because of how close they are in the Eastern Conference. But so I recorded an episode a few days ago talking about Cade versus Trey Young. And trying to figure out, is Cade that much better than Trey? Where's the advantages on either end? Whatever. And I just want to get your point on this. I had Trey higher than all of these smaller guards because I feel like even versus Cade, I think you could make the argument that with Trey, you can trust that a higher tier offense is guaranteed. Like, I went through the on-off splits over the last 7 years or so. Every single year of Trey's career, like, the offense with him on the floor has been like top 10 for the Hawks, been a +7 or better. Like, there were some seasons where it was like +12 on off offensively for Trey, where when he's on the floor, you can trust that you are going to get the best shot almost every possession because he's such a fantastic playmaker. He does such a great job at drawing free throws that every possession you trust that you are going to get some kind of good outcome, whether it's a good kick out for a player around him, a good shooter. You have a good drive from Trey into a lob. You have a free throw drawn. I feel like Trey probably elevates your team's offensive ceiling. He's probably individually a better offensive engine than that of Cade Cunningham. And I think there's a lot of players who are ranked ahead of him that I would also say this about. Like Paolo Banchero, I think that's the same thing. Honestly, I feel like he's probably better at this point than James Harden. I think same thing with Pascal, Jaylen Brown, Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, I think you could even have an argument that he peaks higher offensively than a Devin Booker. Like, I think that's where Trey Young's benefit is that if you make him be an offensive engine, he has the ceiling to really push this, push the issue offensively. It's just defensively is where it kind of all gets given up. Do you agree with that takeaway, or do you think maybe I'm a little too high in his offense? Where are you at with that?
I think we're basically in the same place. I feel like, there is an argument about like ceiling raising versus floor raising too, that you can make with Trey. Like, there are situations where it does become harder on him, even offensively, where he is so good and such a floor raiser that, one-on-one with an opponent, like for instance, end of game situations, he's not like a clear out one-on-one guy in the way that you might want in those spots. Like, he's 6'1" at the end of the day. Like, some guys, he can't shoot over some guys. Like, that's the reality. He can't, those like mid-rangers, like the traditional end of game shot where it's like a pull-up 18-footer. He doesn't really do that. He can't really do that against most defenders. So there are drawbacks, but yeah, I think it's a great way to frame it, honestly, what you just said, that he does bring a certain offensive floor to the table. I think he's still such an underrated passer, and that sounds crazy. He led the league in assists last year, but like for whatever reason, he still gets talked about as a scorer first, but he's really like, he's a dynamic, ridiculous passer. He's third all time in assists per game. Like, you can't fake that. It's not something you can fake. But defensively, there's kind of a caricature of Trey's defense that's like the worst that's ever lived. And like, I don't think that's the case. but he's a bad defender. We all know that. Like, he's a limited defender. He gives up a lot defensively. I think he's gotten better there, and it's not as bad because he is a point guard, and it's a whole different thing. We could do another time about point guard defense and how important it is, but it is a negative for sure, and that's probably why he slots lower than he would. If it was an offense-only list, he'd definitely be higher than this. That's the reality of the situation. But there's also like a team building aspect too that I don't know how much you factor that into the rankings, but like, is this about who you're building around? Is it quality of player? Like, this is kind of the eye of the beholder aspect of a list like this, where also track record. Like last year, I think Cade was better than Trae. If you factor in the previous time, the argument for Trae would be like he's been better for longer. So like, what are you valuing? It's like very nuanced, but I think the way you approach it is actually making a lot of sense. And I'm glad you said that because it's like he's a really good offensive player, but not everybody values that the same way.
Yeah, and I want to get your thoughts now on Cade, who did finish, like we mentioned, 15. I think Cade is a very good offensive engine. I think that, again, like I mentioned, I think Trae probably peaks a little higher as an offensive engine simply because of his ability to draw free throws. I think that's the biggest difference. Trae, while Cade is a very good passer, I think Trae is one of the top 3-4 playmakers in the league. I agree with you. I do think he gets underrated in that aspect. He's one of the best lob passers I've ever seen. And he just, some of the passes he makes is crazy, but Cade is a very good playmaker as well. I think, like you mentioned, the size really benefits for Cade in those end game situations where he can go to his pull up. He can go to these like game winning situations, which will benefit him as well. I think it unlocks, again, like you mentioned, I think it unlocks different type of shots for Cade that Trae just doesn't have in his arsenal. I think that makes it better for Cade at times to get to certain levels of the offense and get easier, cleaner shots for himself. But then obviously defensively, I think Cade is just miles ahead to where Cade is going to be one of these only guys in the league. And I think this is where, from our perspective, where we've talked about Cade, is that maybe Cade never reaches offensively the efficiency of like a Luka, of like a top 10 guy. Maybe he can get to around 58, 59 true shooting. That would be great. But is he ever going to reach like top 5 offensive player in the league? Maybe not. Maybe he might be like top 10 to top 15-ish offensively. But the hope is that we all believe, and we see last year, especially in the playoffs, is that he's going to be an offensive engine for you to carry your offense, be a top 10 to 15 guy offensively, while also being one of the only guys in that top 10 to 15 offensive engine guys that also is going to be a really good defender and can carry you, not carry you, but really provide positive value on that end while being a weak side rim protector as a guard, one of the best rim protectors as a guard we have, and then also being a guy who can really stay in front of wings. I think that's where Cade really separates himself. So from an outsider's point of view, I just want to get your thoughts on what do you think about Cade Cunningham? Do you think he can move even higher in this list? Just where are you at with Cade?
Yeah, as an aside, I was really happy to see Cade break out finally last year. Like, I've always been a Cade guy, just to say that out loud. Like I cover the draft. I love Cade as a prospect. I was glad he kind of put it all together last year. And there were flashes before that, of course, you know that. I'm not telling anybody that listens to your show that, but I was just excited to see that. It was kind of all the things coming together at once. But yeah, I think your general way you lay that out is perfect. Like, I think last year Trae had a down season in efficiency, and he and Cade still had the same true shooting. Like, there is a limit on his efficiency right now with Cade, but the passing playing up really helps to like kind of mitigate that, I think. And there's always been a theory, and we haven't really seen it happen yet in Detroit. Like, I always thought Cade, if he needed to be like the number 2 guy, would be like a perfect number 2 guy. I was always the thought, like, not that he couldn't be the number 1 guy, but if that ever happened, like where he wasn't the number 1 guy, he's a much better, cleaner fit on doing that than a lot of guys in that archetype are, especially when the shooting comes around to where it was last year from 3-point range, taking as many or more and making them, for the most part, not varying like a ton, but like shooting mid-30s is kind of all you have to do on quality volume. So I do really like Cade. I think the floor raising aspects and all of that is intriguing, but I don't know. Is there more? I think there probably is a little bit more he can do efficiency-wise. Like you mentioned Paolo Banchero earlier. That's my worry with Paolo too. And I have a little bit more faith in Cade doing it than Paolo for whatever reason. Maybe it's just, I think just the quality of perimeter shooting. I just trust more with Cade. But that is the next frontier, is like, can he be a high 50, 58, 59, 60% true shooting guy while still carrying this level of usage? If you can do that, then you're a top 10 player, like no questions asked. And he's not quite at that level yet, but when you're making all NBA in your 4th season and getting MVP votes, like, I get it. And maybe some of that was narrative based because Detroit made that huge leap, but also he was the one that was responsible for the huge leap. So there's a lot to like, and I think there's still more in there, but the question is how much more.
Yeah, I think in regards to his efficiency, and we broke this down a ton on the podcast, but finishing got to get better. If his finishing improves, that would be a ton. He took I think, the third most layups per game this past year, but was easily the worst finisher on those in the top 15. Not great. If he can turn some of those into free throws, I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons why Trae just remains, even in a down year from the floor, remains such an efficient player because of how much he gets to the free throw line. If Cade can do that, that would be great for him as well. But that's the area where he has to improve on the drives. He can get to the rim consistently. He's a constant paint touch, but can he finish on those looks? Can he, go to the float a little bit more, which he went to this year? Can he draw some more free throws? I think that's where he really takes a step efficiency-wise. But I like this list. I think this is around where Cade and Trae should be. But let us know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter, and let us know, where do you guys agree with this list? Should Cade be higher or lower? Should Trae be higher or lower? Let us know. But coming up, Detroit versus Atlanta, I believe, is going to be a rivalry this year because I think they are going to be battling for the 4th seed. I can't wait to get Brad's thoughts on this. We'll talk about it coming up.
A lot of people can't name their financial accounts or even what they are worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And if you don't have the full picture, you can actually leave money on the table. And that's why Monarch Money is important in your life. It's the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface, either on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives like myself. If you've been putting off organize your finances for some time, Monarch is definitely for you. They do the heavy lifting for you at Monarch Money. You link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. For me, I linked all of my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted some monthly costs to actually get rid of in my life. Cancel those commitments alone, saving money each and every month. You can maximize your investments, increase your savings rates, easily review your finances with your financial advisors or with your partner, and generally keep a clear view of your financial health all the time, both in the short term and in the long term. Do not let a financial opportunity slip through the cracks, and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off if you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. One more time, it's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA.
All right, so in my opinion, Brad, I have a top 3 teams in the East right now. I have Cleveland, I have Atlanta, and I do believe Orlando will be the 3rd team in the East. I think with the injuries they suffered last year and still winning 41 games, I expect Paolo, Suggs, and Franz to be healthy still, or to be healthy this year. And then I expect Desmond Bane to be a great pickup for them. So I expect them to be the 3rd seed. That's my top 3. I can't wait to hear if you agree or not, but I have them as the top 3. Then after that, I think it's going to be Detroit versus Atlanta for that 4th seed, unless remarkably out of nowhere Joel Embiid can play 80 games again out of nowhere. Like, if that all of a sudden happens, then I guess we got to consider the Sixers. But I'm not sure Joel Embiid even going to play basketball again. So as of right now, I think the Pistons versus the Hawks are going to be that 4th seed battle. And I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think every game, I thought the games versus the Hawks last year were very, very fun to watch. I thought Cade had an exceptional, final game against them. We went like 40 on them. And then also Trae, like the game before that one, hit a crazy game winner over Malik Beasley from like just inside the 3-point line. Crazy defense, a crazy shot from Trae. So I think the games are going to mean even more this year because of how close these teams are going to be. Do you agree with those rankings, or do you think Atlanta's going to be even better than that?
No, I generally agree. I think those are the top 5 in some order. I think Cavs being first makes a ton of sense. Knicks being second makes a ton of sense given what they have returning. I'm a little bit lower on Orlando than everybody else seems to be, but I'm fine with them being 3rd. It doesn't bother me that they would be 3rd on everybody's list. I'm just a little bit, I think I have them basically in the tier with Atlanta and Detroit, whereas other people are having them in a different tier, if that makes sense. But not a huge gap. I think Atlanta, that probably would be my back and forth is like where you put Orlando in the mix. I have the Hawks like narrow. I'm basically where FanDuel is on the Hawks. Like I have them a little bit higher. I haven't given my prediction on the podcast yet, but like the FanDuel current over-unders, as you and I were talking, is 46.5 on the Hawks and 45.5 on the Pistons. That sounds right to me, like a win between them. I have to get the Hawks a little bit ahead, but like if the Pistons finish ahead of the Hawks, I won't be surprised. Like that shouldn't be surprising to anybody. So those are the top 5, and yeah, I don't even know who I have 6th yet. I haven't figured that out. Like I'm lower on Boston. I don't believe Indiana is going to do it without Halliburton. Philly, like I refuse to pick Philly for reasons you just outlined. Like I don't even know who 6 is. I have no idea. There are 5 teams that I'm like, all right, these teams are pretty good or better. The 6th team, I have no idea, but the Hawks and Pistons are either somewhere between 3 and 5.
Yeah, so let's talk about like the pros and cons of these teams, because I think I'll talk about it from the Pistons perspective, and you can hit on it from why you think Atlanta could get ahead. I think the Pistons, main angle here to try to leapfrog or jump ahead of the Hawks in these kind of standings, and be like that fourth team in the East. Their main advantage is that they hope that they're just a more healthier team than the Atlanta Hawks. I brought it up earlier. I think Atlanta has the more proven talent on their roster right now, but I have a lot of questions with injuries for their team. And the Pistons, outside of Jaden Ivey this past year, have some really good injury luck. They didn't really deal with injuries throughout the year. Cade was healthy. Asar, once he got back from the whole blood clots, which I don't think people would really consider injury. That's you can't really, that's not really a basketball injury. Asar was healthy when he got back. Jalen Duren played the whole year. Tobias played the whole year. Stu played basically the whole year. Like, they had really good injury luck. So as long as they continue to have that, now you can't really expect great injury luck every single year. You're probably going to deal with something, but it feels like the Hawks are more likely to deal with that than the Pistons are. I think that's when the Pistons could really take advantage. And I think the other area in which the Pistons are going to try to hang their hat on that will maybe give them the edge over the Atlanta Hawks is I expect the Pistons to be one of the best defensive teams in the league this year, with Asar healthy for the full totality of the season, with Stu now there, with Ron taking another step, Ron Holland. After January 1st, the Pistons were a top 7 defense in the NBA. So I expect them now with Asar, again, full healthy all year. I expect them to be a top defense, and they're expecting some improvements from the young guys. So I think that the injury aspect of it, I think, is where the Pistons expect to be ahead of the Hawks and really favor them. I think they believe that they can get to a level defensively that will carry them throughout the season. I don't know if Atlanta is going to be able to do offensively. So that would be my argument for the Pistons being over the Hawks. But again, like I mentioned earlier, I very much like the Hawks offseason. If they were to get 60 games out of Kristaps and Jalen Johnson stayed healthy for the whole year, I think Atlanta very well could finish ahead. But I just don't know how realistic that is, even though I really like the Atlanta Hawks roster.
It makes perfect sense. I think that there is some natural volatility with the injury stuff with the Hawks. Like, if Porzingis plays 30 games, not the same team. Same with Jalen. Like, that's a lot of teams, but to your point, there is a little bit, maybe more than most teams. And the Hawks don't have a side of the floor where they project to be elite. That's actually different, and we don't have time to go through the in depth. But like, this has been an offense first team for as long as Trey Young has been there. This is the first time where it's like they might just be kind of a two-sided team. Like, their personnel, other than Trey, is better defensively than it is offensively. Dyson Daniels, Zachary Richichet, Alexander Walker, all these guys, like, they're not all elite defenders. Dyson is, but they don't have any defensive weaknesses other than Trey. He's really the only one other than Luke Kennard, and that's way down the roster. So the theory of the Hawks is more like a two-way team. Like, the best way that they could put themselves together as a top-tier team would be like top 10 on both ends of the floor. And that sounds like they've never done that before, but like, that's actually the pathway, versus it used to be that they had to be awesome on offense or they couldn't be really good. Now they can just be, they have to be good on offense, but they don't have to be elite on offense, because they can defend at a level that I think that they didn't used to be able to defend at, just because their personnel is so much better. So that's kind of the projection for them. I think if everything goes right, there's a 50+ win team in here. I'm not going to project 50+ wins, but that's definitely on the table. The floor, it's like, all right, unless things go terribly, like if Trey gets hurt, all bets are off. They don't have anybody like Trey, all that stuff. But that's the same with the Pistons and Cade. Like, that's every star player. If the star player gets hurt, you're off the table. But I think this is like a team that's like going to be good. It just depends on how good they are. And like I said, it's pretty close between the Hawks and the Pistons. I think that 1-win gap is like very natural on FanDuel, and we'll see which one comes out higher. And oftentimes, unfortunately, for people like us who try to project this stuff, is like who gets hurt and who doesn't. It's basically might depend on what happens.
So wrap it up. I just want to get your quick Actually, you said you haven't done your episode yet on expectations, right? You haven't revealed what you expect.
Not in full. I did Nate Duncan's podcast and had to give and I was like, oh yeah, I haven't given projection. I'm on the podcast. I was like, oh, I have to choose this right now in August. I haven't done this yet, so no, I haven't gotten there. But that's okay. I'll give you one anyway.
Okay. So I'll give mine, and then you can give yours, and then we'll wrap it up. So I believe the expectation for the Pistons this year is to be a top 5 seed in the East. And not necessarily they have to win a series. They would like to win a series, but I think expectations to where everyone should be fine is that top 5 seed in the East and push it game 7 in another great first round series where it looks like guys are getting better. And you're like, okay, we're on the right trajectory. Everything's going well. We're getting better. And even though without a playoff series win, I know we lost in the first round, same, last 2 years, you can see the team's getting better. I think that's the expectation for the Pistons. And if that happens, I think they'd be great. So where are you at with the Hawks?
It's not that far away, honestly. I'm sure they'd like to be, top 4 seed, home court in the first round kind of team. But as long as they don't, if they're in the play-in again, like, there's going to be hell to pay, basically. Like that's when you do what they did this last couple months, and then if you're back in the play-in, that's when things could start getting to be bigger changes. I think they've invested in the roster to be better, and that means, because what we just said, top 5 is more reasonable than top 6 because of the 16 being up in the air. But I think they're probably projecting more like, high 40s to 50 wins, which is probably a top 3 or 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. But as long as they're in the top 5 and are at least competitive in the first round, if not win it, then that's a reasonable season for the Hawks. I think they certainly want more than that, but that would not be one where I'd be angry at the end of it.
Fair enough. All right, Brad, let everyone know where they can find you. If you're listening on Locked On Pistons, you want to follow more Hawks stuff, Brad, let everyone know where they can find you, all of your work.
Yeah, I'm at BT Rowland is the place mostly on X/Twitter and Blue Sky, all those places, Patreon, all those places. And then, of course, Locked On Hawks, anywhere you find your podcast. As you well know, we do these spiels every day, but it's also true. Please support
every day.
Locked On Hawks, Locked On Pistons, your team every day, all that fun stuff. I appreciate you having me, man. It's fun.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of fun. Let us know, again, in the comment section or wherever you can find us, where do you feel these teams are going to rank up? Who do you think is going to finish better? We'd love to hear from you guys, but appreciate you guys making Locked On Pistons and Locked On Hawks your first listen of every single day. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, we will see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.